Hey guys, welcome to this week's episode. So glad that you are here with us. I've got a special guest today. We've talked previously on the podcast about endometriosis, if you've been listening here for a while. But one of the things that I have found, not just with endometriosis, but really with all kinds of hormonal issues, is that we don't look at sort of the emotional or energetic components of what is happening for us. And it always plays a role. Like there's just no way around it. And so I think a lot of times we want to jump into the food and we want to jump into the supplements and even some of the lifestyle, but we kind of forget this very important part of dealing and healing our bodies. So today's guest is Melissa Turner, who has become one of the leading experts on endometriosis and how to manage it holistically. This experience came out of her own journey in struggling for over 15 years with stage 4 endometriosis and finally living a normal, pain and symptom-free life. Her mission is to empower more women to manage endometriosis holistically so that they can stop suffering and reach beyond endo. You can find her at endoempowered.com, and she also runs an academy that you can join, which we'll talk more about at the end of the episode. Welcome, Melissa.
Nice to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
Oh my God, I'm so excited that you're here because, this is definitely a really important part of my work too, in really tackling this area that people don't necessarily want to jump into, right? Right off the bat.
It's kind of unfortunately there's an idea that there's a blame game going on when you talk about this stuff, and it's that there is an aspect of I created this scenario, and so I think that unfortunately we can turn that into kind of this victim idea, whereas the whole intention is to look at it in terms of how can we grow, how can we overcome this, and sometimes that means confronting things we don't necessarily want to look at, know. So
right, absolutely, and it's definitely, I mean, obviously trauma in and of itself is, a traumatic thing that has stored in our bodies. And to dig into a lot of that, a lot of us spend a lot of our lives being like, I don't want to look at that, whether consciously or unconsciously. And yet these, hormone issues and these autoimmune issues in particular, we know that autoimmunity hits women much more often than it does men. And so all of the stuff of being a woman in and of itself, right, I think lends to that. And then all of these things that we've been told to kind of like, just get up and keep moving on, right? Don't be with the stuff that comes up and dealing with sort of the hardship. So first, before we dive into all of that, for those who don't really know enough about endometriosis, can you just give a quick overview?
Yeah, so essentially endometriosis is where the endometrial lining, so the lining that surrounds the uterus, those cells disperse inside of the abdominal cavity. So it typically sits on the outside of the organs. So it might be on the outside of the bowels, it might be on the outside of the bladder, the ovaries, it just it's kind of like, I describe it like someone took a paintbrush and just went splat all over the, sort of abdominal area. And unfortunately, that is the visual that a lot of women kind of also feel when they think of their bodies, like for me, a lot of it was this idea that I was dirty, and so we'll get into that, but essentially that's what it is. And so with the monthly cycle, those cells behave in the same pattern as they would do with, menstruation. So they swell and they, disperse and do all of those things. And so over time, you get this inflammatory response and adhesions, which essentially are like, if you imagine cobwebs, between organs, and so there's a restriction between organs, and that can be, of course, very, very painful. So that in a nutshell is what endometriosis is. Obviously there's a lot more to it than that, but for those who perhaps never heard of it or don't know what it is, that's that's how I describe it as simply as possible. Yeah.
I think that was a great synopsis. And, I feel like we've been hearing a lot more about endo just in the past couple of years
Yeah,
than
it's
we did
really,
ever
yeah,
before,
there's
right?
been a lot more awareness I've found in the last couple of years where people actually know what it is. It's been diagnosed a lot more. There's just a hell of a lot more awareness out there, which is great
Yeah.
because at least, we're not just going, oh, it's severe period pain, I'll just live with that,
Right.
which is what a lot of women have done in the past. So,
Right.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So when were you diagnosed?
I was diagnosed quite early on. I basically developed a severe bladder infection and then had that treated, and the pain didn't go away. And so that was kind of a bit of a clue. So I was diagnosed at 19.
Oh, okay.
I know some women take up to 10 years to
Yeah.
get a diagnosis,
Yeah.
So but unfortunately, there's this kind of catch-22 with endometriosis because it's not something you can easily diagnose without surgery. So once you kind of get on that train of the surgery, it's almost like you get caught in that system. And that's pretty much what happened for me. So I literally landed up having surgery after surgery after surgery because that was the inverted commas treatment of how it was done. And so I had 7 surgeries in the end because that was all that was on offer.
Wow.
So this is the danger where on the one hand, yes, we want to get that diagnosis and we want to know, why do I have this extreme period pain? With literally women are having such intense pain, they cannot get out of bed, they're throwing up from the pain. So on the one hand, you want to have sort of something to understand why this is happening. But on the other hand, it's kind of like the way to get that diagnosis involves the surgery, which in and itself is an inflammatory thing that you're doing to the body. We might not think of it this way because you're under anesthetic, you don't feel anything, but your body is going through an extreme reaction, an extreme inflammatory response to being cut, which is perfectly normal, But by doing that, we're igniting that flame of the endometriosis development of that inflammatory response that is causing it in the first place. So to me, it's kind of always been this, when women come to me and they're like, oh, Mel, I've got so much pain, I don't know what to do. Should I have surgery? It's always been this sort of struggle with at what point do we look at surgery? And so I've always taken the stance of let's go with first do no harm, which, as we know, is in the doctrine of medicines, which is very much let's try everything else. Let's look at, yes, the diet and the lifestyle and the mindset, which we'll cover a lot more today, and looking at maybe some of the toxin things that may be going on, give you that emotional support. And then if none of that's worked, then yes, okay, surgery might be our only option, but let's look at those things first as a way to support the body, to heal the body with, for me, I describe healing in a way that we provide the perfect environment for healing. So a lot of time, people think, oh, I've got to eat paleo, or I've got to do vegan, or I've got to have this wonderful, there's got to be some magic supplement out there. And once I find that magic supplement, then I'll be fixed, And it's, I know, because I spent, probably a good 4 years trying to find some magic supplement,
Oh my goodness, yes.
And it's like, oh, and the marketing is always like, oh, this is going to fix everything.
This is the answer. Yeah.
And so you spend a lot of time doing that, but actually what we're looking for is an environment of healing. And that looks different for everybody. For some women, it is just get off the junk food, eat better, drink some beautiful teas, make sure your body's hydrated, and you've created the perfect environment that your body needs. But for some other woman, she's doing all of that. She's being super, strict,
diligent about it.
Yeah, all of the things, and she's ticking everything, which is a whole nother conversation. She's ticking everything off, but it's like your health is not a to-do list.
Yeah. And the stress that can cause too.
Exactly. Then you get into the perfectionism of that. But I've found that environment is different depending on your life circumstances, your history. There's so many aspects. And so it's really, what does your body need to create, and what do you need to create that environment for healing? And a lot of it is the mindset around it. So oftentimes when there's this huge focus now with diet and exercise, which is great, because obviously that's a great place to start. And the fact that there's more awareness around how you can use food as a way to provide for your body. So those things are wonderful. The downside I see is, like we said, there's kind of this mindset around, well, if I do this perfectly, then I'll get the results. And it's interesting because I know this because I did this myself. I was so diligent about what I ate. And if I touched one little piece of bread, I would instantly flare up. And what I came to the conclusion was, ultimately, it is a mindset. Again, I believed that if I touched gluten, I would be in pain. So now, because I believe this, I ultimately got that result. I mean, now I eat gluten when I'm, not often, but every now and again I'll have it, and there's no problem. I might have some chocolate, there's no problem. But it's because I shifted this perfectionism. And it's interesting because I actually was part of a study in South Africa on the link between perfectionism and endometriosis. And we found that there's a distinct link between these two things.
Every one of my clients with endometriosis is type A.
And what they found specifically was something they call timeous perfectionism. So basically, it's where you want to do something perfectly, but within a very limited time span. And this particular type of scenario causes a different type of stress. Because in reality, if you want to do something perfectly, you actually want to give yourself a lot of time.
Right.
You don't want to be rushing through it.
Right.
But then there's this idea that to be efficient or to be good or whatever it is, where that drive is coming from, it's got to be quick as well. So just to add some extra pressure in there, let's just add some of that in there. And so I was part of the study, and I remember one of the questions they asked the group was, so when you're sitting at a traffic light and there's somebody in front of you and the light has gone green and that person's not moving, what is your first response? And I'm not kidding you, literally everyone in the room was like, you bloody idiot, why don't you just go? And it was so interesting because it was exactly that culmination of, you're a better driver, like as in, us as people, we were better drivers, and you're an idiot, and come on and hurry up, So it was really, really funny to recognize this common trait. And, I have a lot of clients who, they come to me and they're like, look, Mel, I really don't know what to do. I am doing all the things. And I'm not kidding, they literally have a to-do list item on their phone that they tick every day. I've done my yoga. I've done my meditation. I've eaten well, and they come to me and they just don't understand why they still don't feel better. And I say to them, the reason you don't feel better is because you're looking at this as a problem. And the energy around that, when you perceive the endometriosis as a problem that needs fixing, indicates that you believe you are broken. Your body is broken. This needs to be cleaned up. Because I hear this a lot. My body is broken. I feel dirty inside. All of these things. Whereas when you look at it as, I want to support my healing, I want to provide for my body, and I'm going to make choices based on how I can best do that. I'm going to intuitively be guided by that, rather than, yes, I've done my yoga,
Right.
Because you're not actually enjoying the process,
right,
are you?
right,
I mean, you're
absolutely.
not standing in your yoga pose going, oh, I feel so relaxed. I feel so, how we should feel, connected to the body, deep breathing into the body, feeling really that sort of calm space, you're saying, all right, I've got 20 more minutes of this.
Yeah. And you're like
You know,
ticking off all the other things in your head you need to get done too, right?
exactly.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and so yeah, so it's a really interesting one. And I recently I've got this client, and we're working together, who's trying to get pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
And she literally was like that, literally had all these things,
Mm-hmm.
to-do lists, and researching like massively, you know, spending
Yeah.
hours and hours on the internet, Googling things. And I said to her, look, I actually want you to scrap all of that. I don't
Mm-hmm.
even want you on any supplements. I
Mm-hmm.
literally just want you to focus on you, and focus on enjoying you and loving yourself, not needing that from some outside source.
Mm-hmm.
I want you
Mm-hmm.
to connect with yourself.
Yeah.
And how do I fill my own cup without needing my husband or my mother to be approving me and all of that stuff? You know, and
Mm-hmm.
it was interesting because I said all this stuff, and I mean, it's very confronting to someone say that kind of thing to you, you know,
Yeah.
and you've been trying to get pregnant for 4+ years, you
Right.
know,
Right.
why do you need the validation?
Right.
Why do you need the validation of having a child? What does it mean about you? You know, because she
Mm.
had all this stuff around, I'm not a full woman because I can't
Right.
get pregnant,
Right.
you know?
Right. Yeah.
And
Oh
I
yeah.
was like, where's this identity attachment to
Mm-hmm.
being a mother? What is it? You know, does it mean that because I don't have children, does that mean that I'm not worthy of things?
Right.
You know, and we really had to dig into that conversation. And I left her with, look, I want you to find 5 things you love about yourself every single day. And
Mm.
initially that's going to be quite easy, but as you keep going, it's going to be harder.
Yeah.
You know,
Yep.
because initially it's like, yeah, I have lovely hair and yes, blah, 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 you know. But after a while, it's like, okay, now I've actually got to look into my character and my
Yeah.
person. And that's where the good stuff is, you know.
Yeah.
So I want you to recognize when you're at work, the skills that you bring to work and
Mm.
what you offer. And literally saw her a week later, and
Mm-hmm.
she was like transformed. Just
Mm.
a completely
Love
different
that.
energy. None of that heaviness, you know, that constantly doing, constantly trying,
Mm-hmm.
constantly pushing.
Mm-hmm.
Because the other thing I said to her is, I want you to be a flower. You're a flower, you're beautiful and welcoming, and the man comes to you. You're
Mm.
not pushing this, you know, because she
Mm-hmm.
was push, push, push. Come, we got to get pregnant. Da, 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 and do,
Yeah.
do, 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 you know. I
Yep.
was like, no, you're the flower. You're going to be a beautiful, calm flower.
Mm-hmm.
And she just was so different, so amazing to see just this completely different energy.
I bet. And so that begs the question for me. You know, I'm thinking kind of about fibroids, but I think it's true with endometriosis too. This doing versus being, and sort of this masculine energy versus this
Oh,
feminine energy,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And because we are women in a patriarchal society, and we're at the point where we're literally having to do it all, right? We have to be
yeah,
like feminine and masculine all at
yeah,
once. And you know, sort of losing some of that feminine energy. And so some, you know, and I qualify those words because, you know, I think sometimes we can get too much into this idea of masculine and
yeah,
feminine and all
for
of that.
sure. Yeah,
But that some of this can be from that, you know, pushing, just the
yeah,
pushing, 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 and not sitting back and receiving as we're sort of
yeah,
naturally supposed to do.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
The best way that I found in my own experience, because I was very much, you know, push, push, go, go,
Mm-hmm.
go,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I recognize the traits, and that's why I can speak so easily about these
Mm-hmm.
things because
Mm-hmm.
I've been there.
Yeah.
But one of the things I really found is actually to look at the woman cycle as a
Mm.
guide.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, it's the easiest way is to look at it as seasons.
Yeah.
So, you know, just had your period and then starting the new month is your spring. So you're
Mm-hmm.
building up through the month. That's often when we feel refreshed. It's new. And I noticed myself when I looked at this, it was always when I was cleaning things. I was
Mm-hmm.
things. I was getting rid of things, just that's the energy. Then your summer is really, that's your push time. That's the time that you reaching out, you're doing more, you're, building something up. And then as you come down into the month, your autumn, you're slowing down again. And then in your winter is actually when we want to recuperate, we want to reconnect. And so, like looking at business, for instance, if you were to look at it from that perspective, you would sort of take your summertime is when you do your reaching out and your marketing and you're out there and you're promoting and you're doing all of those things. But then autumn and winter is when you just let it go. And let it come to you. Be open to receiving at that point, rather than this constant pushing. Because there's also an interesting energy around this. When we're forcing and we're pushing, there's this hardness and this aggressiveness that actually doesn't draw people to you.
Right.
People are not drawn to want to be in that space because it's hard. It's got this drained kind of, it's almost like people who are in sales who've got that desperate, I desperately need you to buy something kind of vibe, it's not appealing. So when you can be in that space of, it'll be fine, it'll come, there's a calmness to that. There's a natural, people are naturally drawn more to that because it's like, hey, she's got things under control, everything's good there, I want to spend time with this person.
And I almost think about the word surrender, and that's a little bit different, but sometimes I've seen that in myself when it's like the push to try and make the thing happen that you want to happen. It is in the surrender that it actually happens, right? And what surrender looks like, I feel like it's really hard to describe, because it is an emotional thing. It isn't just like, okay, I surrender, it's like, it really is that internal shift that has to happen. But then that energetic flow can be allowed to happen.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that the trouble is that I guess there's still this idea that we need to be like a man to be successful. And I think that in itself, I think, is where the issue is, rather than just acknowledging women as women, we have skill sets that men cannot possess. We have intuition so deep. I mean, we can read people far quicker when there's an issue or a problem, or my husband and I also own a catering business, and so I can read a situation far quicker than he can. I can see when a client's not 100% happy, and I can nip it in the bud far quicker than he can, because it's just that, I don't know how we know, but it's like you learn, I guess, from a young child, maybe, that you perceive body language, you perceive energies, I feel like you can pick that stuff up a lot more than men generally can. And maybe it's because we are emotionally more adept, that we can pick things up like that. So to me, I've always found there's this whole kind of, like you say, this female male energy thing can get a little bit blown out of proportion, but ultimately it's about coming back to this idea that I'm me and I'm not going to be something else. And that's what it all comes down to. I mean, coming back to that initial thing that you said around the autoimmune and sort of this idea, when you look at what autoimmune is, it's where the body attacks its own cells. Now, when you look at what that question of, well, why do so many women have this? Why is it more dominant in women? We have to look at, well, unfortunately, women tend to be the ones criticizing themselves.
Absolutely.
There's not.
You don't see half as many men.
I mean, you see some men and you're like, how can you even look at yourself?
They're like, I'm not good at this and it doesn't matter. I'm going to act as if I am.
Not phased at all. Not the same level of comparison, the same level of oh, I'm not happy with how my bum looks in this.
Yeah.
They don't care.
Yeah.
It is how it is. Nothing I can do. If I want to change it, I go to the gym. If I don't go to the gym, I accept my fate.
Yep.
That's as simple as the mindset goes.
That's true.
And women, we identify with these things. It's, if you don't have the perfect body, well, then you're not valid.
Yeah.
You don't deserve. You're not enough. There's
right.
these labels we attach to something that it's a little frame that we walk around in at the end of the day. But we attach so much meaning and so much of our identity to these things.
Right. Right.
The same way, like I said, being a mother.
Yes.
Why does it need to be something?
Yeah.
Why does it need to mean something about you as a person?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
absolutely.
We are here, whether we are, sitting on the couch, whether we're doing stuff, we're present, we're valid because we are here. What we do with that time doesn't need to define us as worthy or not worthy.
Absolutely.
And that's huge,
Yeah. So, I was just thinking as you were talking, especially about, being a mother, I do see with my clients that are mothers that it's, which is the majority of women, but it's that much harder to get them to really come back to themselves. Because they, especially I think with the type A-ness, they're like, well, I have to have my kids be perfect too, or I have to like take care of them in this perfect way. So how do you work with your clients that are mothers that, you're like, okay, you really need to kind of start like focusing on yourself more. And they're like, well, I can't because I have my kids and I'm the one that has to like do the majority of taking care of them.
Yeah. The biggest thing with that is to find a way to make them understand that version of a mother is not a nice mother. Because their goal is to be the perfect mum and to provide the perfect situation for those kids. That's the reason they're like that. They think that if I make sure Johnny has brushed his hair, has got clean clothes, he's eating this perfect diet, is going to all these different extramural activities, is doing all these things, then he's going to have a better life. Because that's ultimately the goal.
Yep.
And if I do all these things and I have a friend like this and she's just, stressed to the hilt.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I say to her, do you really want your kids to remember you like that? Because that's not the mum they're going to be in love with. That's not the mum that they're in their mind. All they're thinking is, mum's awfully stressed. I don't want to go near mum because she makes me feel stressed. I feel anxious around her. And this is what my mother's message got through to me, I'm not good enough the way I am. Because she was constantly fixing me. Melissa, you need to do your hair this way. Melissa, why are you wearing this? Melissa, you need to do this. And it was the thing after thing. But only after many, many years of kind of, working through that did I recognize it was the intention behind it was to make sure that I had a better life. Because in her mind, dressing a certain way, having your hair done nicely, wearing, making sure you had lipstick on every day, all these things was what made her successful in her life.
Right.
So she believed by putting those things on me, I had a better chance in life.
Yeah.
But I have much more fond memories when she let all of that go. And she was the silly mum who ran around in the rain with us.
Yeah.
And just let go and had fun and didn't have all these expectations of us. And I actually felt as a child in those moments much more loved and much more accepted rather than when she had all those criteria in place. And I think this is the thing when mums, they become so focused and they forget that actually a child really just wants a space where they can be and still be loved as they are and have a mum who can be like that.
Yeah.
And it comes back to the same old, fill your own cup first.
Yeah.
If you are not in that headspace of being calm and content and happy with yourself and love yourself as you are, you're not going to be that nice to your kid.
Right. Right.
because you're going to put all that stuff on them. You're going to be like, oh, I'm failing as a mum. I'm a terrible mum. Come, Johnny, you've got to hurry up now, because you're feeling that, whereas if you're feeling like, I've got this, I'm under control, everything's good, I've created a loving space, and that's all I'm here to do. As long as I've provided that, I've done my job. You're going to be so much more accepting, so much more forgiving. If Johnny takes 10 minutes to find his shoes, you're not going to get into a rant because of that.
Right.
You're going to be like, Johnny just couldn't find his shoes.
Yeah.
It's
okay. Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's
okay for a few minutes late or whatever.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be perfection.
I guess, the trouble is, I think more so what's happened is because there's like just too much on the plate.
Too much on the plate. Exactly. Yeah.
That's where it comes down to. And that's where maybe women need to look at that and go, where can I take some stuff off my plate? Where can I let some stuff go? Where can I say, do you know what? I don't need to take Johnny to, hockey practice. He's not even enjoying it, or whatever the case is.
Right.
Really looking at, where are you spending your time? What are you dedicating energy onto? Are you as a mum enjoying spending time there and doing stuff with that? Are your kids enjoying it? Or do you scrap the whole lot and say, what's the point? I mean, I see these mums rushing around, driving their kids to all these things, and it's like, they're never gonna be, pianists.
Right.
Just, who are we kidding?
It's not a big deal. Yeah. Well, it's like you were saying, with your mom, how she sort of impressed upon you the things that she thought would make you successful. It's like, this is this generation's kind of way of doing that, right? It's like, you have to have all the things so that on your college transcript, so that you get the successful job. And I do think one good thing about COVID is that it kind of started to prioritize things for some people, and really seeing like, oh, we were doing too much, and it is okay. And on the other side, there was a lot of women that had to do even more, between like schooling and things like that, which they didn't have to do before. But I do hope that within that, some women can really, sit back and say, wow, like, was this serving me or my kids? And, yes, at the root of autoimmune disorders, like it's a huge part of it, right? It's this push, go, too much happening.
And that driver behind that is, I am not enough. I need to do more. And it's
ding.
It literally gives me goosebumps when I say that, because it's so true. It's so true. At the end of the day, when you're sitting there and you're going, I need to do this, I need to do this, I need to do this. What is the driver behind this? I'm not doing enough. I'm not enough. I need to do more. And that's the message that essentially is the same, no matter whether it's endo, whether it's, trying to do well with your health, whether it's your job, whether it's being a mum. It's the same underlying current that it's so unhealthy, that thought.
Absolutely. So what are some of the things that women can, begin to do to sort of like dive into, even just, maybe they don't even fully see what you're talking about yet, maybe they think, well, I feel fine about myself, or, I don't think that there's necessarily anything wrong with like going after my dreams. Where would you tell them to kind of begin?
I guess the big question is, if you feel drained and exhausted and unhappy, or in some way believe that you're inferior, or you haven't done enough, or there's this push, ask where that's coming from. And be honest with yourself. It's, if you cannot sit still outside in nature for half an hour and be comfortable with that, there is something there. There's something there, because it's like unnerving for some women.
Oh yeah.
Why would I just sit here? Like,
right. Exactly. I gotta be doing something.
It's half an hour of your day.
Yeah. And I just, a really quick interjection. One of my just steadiest, sort of looking at her labs, at least, like steadiest clients, right? She had some hormonal issues, but like her blood labs were just steady. for years, every afternoon, she takes a book onto the porch, maybe takes a little nap, just chills out. And I was like, that's it. That right there.
Yeah.
You have 3
Yeah.
kids, things are crazy, but like you do that for yourself like every afternoon. And what a difference that can make.
Yeah. Huge.
Yeah.
Huge.
Mm-hmm.
Because what's happening is the nervous system is in overdrive for most of these women, and it's just constant. Get up in the morning, have your coffee, go, kids out, come, next, literally from one thing to the next, and there's not a breath between things. It's literally just go. And so what's happening is you've got your sympathetic nervous system shooting up. You've got stress hormones going up, digestion slow down, healing slows down, all the important things that we're trying to focus on, but you've still got your to-do list. I'm doing my yoga. I'm doing
Right.
No, that's
I'm doing my yoga to calm down.
Yeah. And so you're in this overdrive state. Now, what we want to do is bring that down to the parasympathetic. We want to get to that, and that it can just be half an hour a day. But at some point, there needs to be a slowing down. We need to get the breath down, focus on deep breathing. We need to get just back to that connecting with self, connecting with present, because when you're in that go-go state, you're not thinking about where you are right now.
Right.
You're thinking, what's next? Right, got to get this done. You're focusing on the task at hand. And if you can just be present and actually listen to the birds, listen to the noises, being in that moment, that's connecting with that parasympathetic, and that's what helps hormone balance. That's what gets your stress levels down so that your body can go, right, cool, excellent, I've got some time to focus on this healing that I want to do. I can focus on proper digestion. I can actually think about digestion here. This is an interesting one. Wording, I love wording and playing with words, but like, we have to digest, we have to process things. So when you think of the emotional aspects, like, if something traumatic might have happened, you've got to process that, digesting that. It's the same kind of idea. Now, if we don't give ourselves that, we're never actually digesting things. So therefore, your nutrition's going to suffer because you're not absorbing.
Exactly.
You're not giving yourself that, and so there's often this like, shovel some food down. I've done my food, right? I've had the salad. I'm good to go.
And half the time you're like driving and eating, or like on your computer and eating at the same time.
And then they're like, oh, I don't understand why am I digestive issues. Because you're not processing, you're not giving yourself that space.
Right.
This is the thing. And so, so that would be, I guess, a starting point. If women want to dig deeper than that, is looking at, okay, ask yourself that question. Where do I feel I'm not enough? And I know it's a heavy question. I know it's, I've got so many clients, they're not there yet. They don't want to go there. It could possibly be me. It's not my thoughts that are causing this, but Mel, can you give me some more supplements? What can I do? Can I do another cleanse? I want to do another cleanse. Give me a list of supplements to take for my cleanse,
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's kind of like, okay, but they're not there yet, and that's fine. This is a journey. There's no kind of right or wrong, I mean, it took me 10 years to get to this. So I don't want to make anyone feel bad that, they're not kind of embracing these ideas, because you're going to have resistance on it.
Absolutely.
It's normal. We don't want to confront this stuff. One of the techniques that there's a lot of things you can use, but my 2 favorites would have to be EFT, which is emotional freedom technique. So
love it.
Love it. And really just don't make it a big thing. Like literally, let's say you wake up in the morning, you're feeling stressed out. I feel anxious today. Do a very quick, I feel anxious. Like, it doesn't need to be this huge kind of
like 15-minute thing,
commitment thing, literally just allowing yourself to just let some of that emotion out of the body. I mean, there's so many YouTube videos now. You can even just type in EFT feeling anxious, and there's somebody who's made one,
for sure.
Follow along, and it's incredible how different you can feel in that 5-10 minutes.
Absolutely.
Of doing that.
Well, and going back to what you just said about, the the digestion, the processing, right? I think of EFT as a way of processing your emotions, right? You're kind of allowing this movement through your body so it doesn't get stuck, and that's, I mean, that's what the emotion really wants, is like, is you to not deny it, not to push it down, not to get it stuck in your system.
Yeah. And it's also, it does in itself, by having that 5-10 minutes, is actually, you are in that moment coming back down to that parasympathetic, where you are in that calmer state, you are being more present, because you're not rushing around at that moment, so that's one of my favorite tools. And it's something you could even do, like if you're at work and you're finding, I don't know, there's a co-worker that you really struggle with and you don't quite know how to deal with, just go to the bathroom and do a quick, so is really irritating me. And, and oftentimes when we're triggered, there's something there. There's something there. There's a reason why you're triggered by certain people, because there's a learning there. There's something there that you need to look at and say, okay, why does this person trigger me?
Yeah.
What is it about that person that makes me irritated or feel angry? They say things, or they insinuate things about you that you perceive in a certain way. Like I had a client like this, and she had this situation, and every time the coworker would ask her to do something, she said that he made her feel inferior. And I said, well, you're allowing that person to make you feel inferior. What is it about what they say or how they say that makes you feel that way? And it was really confronting for her, because she was like, I don't want, no, it's him.
Right. It's not me. Yeah.
He's the asshole in this situation. I'm like, no, you can choose to not let that in.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's his stuff.
Yeah.
You don't need to take it on board.
And that's where boundaries are so important, right?
Exactly. And recognizing that you at the end of the day are in control of your own perception. And I often love playing with that, so I'll often be like, if I say something like this, let's see what response I get. If I say like this, what response am I going to get? And it's so interesting how a little shift in wording can get a completely different response.
Absolutely.
And that's why coming back to the kids, coming back to, you can ask your kid to put the shoes on, but if you come at it with this aggressive, come on, Johnny, it's time to go, versus, hi, Johnny, we've got to go now. You get a completely different response with the kid. You try it as an experiment and you'll see.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And I think it speaks to mindset too, right? You're in this place of, like, for example, your client, the mindset around dealing with this guy, right? And like all of that sort of emotional upheaval. And oftentimes it is worth diving into, maybe there's some old trauma that's attached to that, right? And so working that out with a therapist or anything, but definitely that mindset of, okay, this is what I'm coming into this situation believing about it, and whether that's true or not, I'm going to have this reaction every time. And so a mindset, I think, is one of the trickiest things, right? Because we just think, oh yeah, I'll just be positive. And it's not, it's not about that. It's just, it's kind of constantly questioning your beliefs and seeing, is this true or not?
I often find when I work with clients is, I pick up on words that they repeat a lot. And they may not hear it themselves, but often they'll be criticizing themselves during the consult. And they'll use words like, I was good today, or it's bad today. It's all part of that. So why is one food good or bad? It's only your perception of it.
Right.
And it may be perfectly nourishing for somebody.
Right. Yeah.
It's this there's so much power in mindset.
Yes.
I mean, I had a client who, she wanted to get pregnant, had been also trying for many, many years. And she came to me as a last resort because she was in so much pain. She was literally in pain every single day and was looking at having a hysterectomy.
Mm-hmm.
So it was really, tough. And
Yeah.
her husband actually said to her, look, I don't want you to do that. I think you should try one last attempt, and luckily she found me. And one of the exercises I got her to do was, I said to her, what I want you to do is I want you to find something that connects for you as a couple about having a child that you want to give to this new child. And they're quite religious, so they found a psalm out of the Bible that they hand engraved onto this beautiful thing, and it was so beautiful, and they put their whole heart into it. But you can imagine how hard that is.
That's really hard. I was just thinking, like, inside of myself, I'm like, it's so hard.
Because but it was interesting because I said to her, if you don't believe that you can get pregnant, you will not. Your mind is super powerful. If you are believing that it's never going to happen, it happens to everybody else. My body is broken.
Oh, yes.
I'm infertile. You want to attach all those labels to it. Well, guess what? Your brain is telling your body this, and it's going, okay, you asked for that.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay, we're going to give you. Yeah.
And I know it's a very vulnerable thing.
Yes.
I know that, but she went all in.
Yeah.
And guess what? She has a little
pregnant.
baby girl, so it's I know it's a hard thing.
Yeah.
But
it reminds me of those stories, of women that end up adopting because they can't get pregnant, and then they get pregnant like almost immediately after they adopt, or within a year after they adopt, right? Because they've like pulled back that like intense energy that they put on it. Yeah,
exactly. And so I'm very much it is a little bit of that, what you put out there, and a little bit of that. I mean, obviously you've got to still back that up with actually taking care of yourself and all that. But it's definitely something where your mindset and your beliefs around what's possible is such a key component. I mean, I see it as well where women go, I've tried everything and I'm still in pain. There's no way you could possibly have tried everything, because there's way too many.
Especially today. Oh my God, every day something new is coming out that you can try.
And it's also this idea that, well, why are you trying? Let's believe. Let's convince ourselves that this is working. Tell ourselves that it is working. I'm trying. Because trying ain't getting you nowhere.
Right. 100%. Absolutely.
So it's confronting, and I know you're probably going to get like women going, geez, I don't want to hear all this. But...
I know. I mean, that's why I'm so glad to have you on, because this is, a conversation I definitely have with my clients at different points, and women that contact me, because, I mean, you have to dive into this arena for anything to really change. And I mean, I've seen it in my own life a million times. And I think that we are on this journey of healing because we need to deal with the stuff that we haven't dealt with, and the way that we perceive ourselves and perceive the world, and I feel like we're in a time of reckoning for women in a lot of ways. And that's why autoimmunity, I mean, there's lots of external issues, don't get me wrong, but really stepping up and saying, like, I'm worth it. I'm worth living a good life. I'm worth feeling good in my life, that like this journey is ultimately for me and no one else, doesn't matter how many people depend on you. Like, it really has to be about you. And really finding what that balance looks like too, like some real balance in your life. So, before we close out, I'm curious for you, what was kind of the turning point? Like, after you did all the surgeries and, and still were struggling. So what was a turning point for you?
I honestly just couldn't do it anymore. 7 surgeries and no relief. I was on the pill. I was overweight. I was having digestive issues. I was still having pain. And I just went, this is exhausting. I can't do another surgery. The last surgery I did, nobody came to visit me.
Because they're like, you've had so many surgeries. We've come to the hospital so much.
Another one of those.
You're fine.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Yeah.
And I just went, this is not living.
Yeah.
This is not living. And I cannot keep going like this. And something's got to give. And it's so sad because at no point did my doctor ever suggest dietary things could make any difference.
Right.
I mean, I remember specifically saying to him, does my diet make a difference? And him saying, nope.
Yep.
None whatsoever. And I went, okay. And I carried on for another 5 years, you know.
Yeah.
Because
I tell clients all the time, I'm like, they're just not trained in that way. Yeah. They're not trained to understand that. And so that's what they're going to say all the time. And you got to block that out.
Like now that I've studied, I'm studying naturopathy and I've studied nutrition, and I know that it's like, well, that's your fuel. How can it not make a difference? You know, it's like what you're putting in your body, like,
literally,
it's just so logical now. But at the time it was like, oh, my doctor says it's fine. I'm going to have Coke and have hamburgers and whatever.
And they'll serve it to you in the hospital, at least here in America. You'll get surgery, and then first thing when you get out of surgery, you can have a Coke. It drives me insane. You're just like, are you kidding me? But anyways, I could go off on that. So did you end up diving into therapy at that point, or what sort of?
No, I mean, I'd love to say that there was some major kind of light bulb moment, but no, it was a series of things.
Yeah.
At one point, I was addicted literally to codeine. Literally, I was addicted to the point where I would drive to different pharmacies 2 hours away so that it wouldn't be obvious that I just bought a 48 pack of codeine. Like, that's how addicted I was. So it was actually quite bad. And my husband kind of pointing this out to me and me kind of going, oh, okay, maybe this isn't normal that I'm taking codeine every day, and then it was that. And then, little things, other little things would happen. And then eventually I kind of went, because then I started getting kind of really bad digestive issues. And so then I was like, okay, maybe
that'll do it.
Cut out dairy. And then I did that for a bit and still didn't feel significant change. And so it was sort of, it was very gradual. It wasn't kind of bang, let's make a big change kind of. It wasn't like that, even though it would sound more interesting if my story was like that. But it wasn't.
Right. I think that's the reality for most people, though, is real change doesn't happen in a moment. It happens over time, and like the seed is planted, right? Somebody may be listening to this podcast and this is the first time they've kind of heard of this approach or idea, around endometriosis. And like, they may not tomorrow go and be like, all right, I'm taking care of myself now in this different way, but the seed is planted. And then over time, these things happen.
And you start to recognize, like they might start to recognize every time I look in the mirror, I'm telling myself my body looks crap. What am I actually doing by thinking that? What am I doing and how's my body responding to that? And then they may catch themselves doing it again. And over a year, they might go, maybe I should stop doing that.
Yeah. Yep.
Maybe I should acknowledge the body parts that do work. The bits I do like. Let's focus on those. Let's nourish what's there, what we have got. And it's also a lot of that, I think, is coming back to this whole gratitude and acknowledging the strengths. And I think a lot of women, I think maybe it's because we're a little bit like the protectors now. If you look back over society in the past, maybe the man was more that role, the protector, and the woman was the nurturer, and that makes sense,
right?
But because of the shift in everything, I think a lot of what's happened now is that women have almost become both roles.
Yes,
the protector, and that protector instinct, unfortunately, does come with stress.
Yeah.
because it's this, oh, I've got to catch things before they become a problem.
Right.
And so when you're in that mindset, you're problem focused, you're problem
Yep.
solving focused. And so when you then approach your day, or in this case, your health, you're problem focused. Oh, I'm getting digestive issues. I've got gas. It's a problem.
Right.
How do I fix? How do I fix? You know, it's that mindset. So instead of coming back to, well, our natural instinct, which is to nurture, let's nurture. Okay, I've got digestive issues. I've got bloating. What am I not processing? What am I not getting to? Where am I not filling my cup in terms of my needs? You know, so it's shifting back to our natural womanly desire to nurture.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
I'm like nurture and nourish, like that's like so together in our anatomy, really, and we are so far away from that. So this was such a beautiful conversation.
I don't feel like we talked about anything we said we would, but that's all good.
I'm like, but that's all good. We talked about what was really important and needed to be discussed. So tell us where everybody can find you.
Yeah, so endoempowered.com, and we have an academy for women with endometriosis. I go through something called the REACH technique, which essentially is taking all the components of a holistic approach. So it's an acronym. REACH is R, replenish. So that comes back to what you were saying about really nourishing. So that is focused on diet and really replenishing what may be missing in terms of nutrition. Then E is exercise. So actually moving the body, making sure there's enough blood flow through the body. Affirm is about affirming genuine love for yourself and all the aspects of that mindset, so the emotional component of healing. C is cleanse. So that's all around, what toxins might be inhibiting your healing, maybe some digestive stuff going on, so sort of diving into that aspect. And then H is the help and support and providing a space, a community where women can share, be heard, because a lot of times with endo, just not given a voice. And so we have a free online community where women can come in, they can share, they can ask questions, and it's really providing that whole holistic approach. And I've designed it in that order for a very specific reason. Sometimes I get women who question that order and they say to me, I want to do the cleanse first. And I'm like, you need to do the emotional healing. Because cleansing can be quite taxing on the body.
Absolutely.
But oftentimes you don't need to do a cleanse.
Right.
We have this idea that something's dirty. I need to be cleansed.
And often we need the building up because we're depleted, right? Exactly. And a cleanse is just going to deplete you further.
Exactly. And it is so much of that. So the mindset aspect is really something I've much more drawn to now. In the beginning, it was all about the diet and the exercise. That was, sort of where I started. But now it's very much, I really love looking at so many of those belief patterns that women have and freeing it, letting it be, just let it go. You know, for so many years, I would harp on about how hard my mother was on me, and all this like labeling myself. I was a victim to my mother, and my whole life is ruined because of her, and blah, 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 And I would literally, I hopped on this for most of my life, and then one day my husband said to me, "Can't you just choose to let it go?" So like I was like almost insulted at the time,
Right, you're like, how dare you?
I can't just let it go. She did all this, And he's like, but you're choosing to make it so big, and you're choosing to let this define you. And I was like, no, you're right. It did take it wasn't so quick, but
right. Yeah. You're like, I'll let that sit for a minute.
So all about the seed, and like you say, germinating that seed. Maybe that's hopefully the message that a lot of women will get out of this. So
great. Awesome. So that sounds amazing. You guys check out her website and check out more information about the Academy there. Thanks for being with us today, and I will see you guys next time.
Thanks for having me.